but I
Dude,
liked it. It was good conversation. I
that's
loved
good,
it a
bro.
lot. So going back to rap,
Yes.
what is your favorite era of rap? And I kind of have a inkling on this, but I'm still gonna ask it.
It's a good question because I feel like I was talking about this on our other pod recently. I feel like, and the reason why I was talking about, just for quick context, listening back, I was saying I'm listening to all my old music and seeing, I feel like on our podcast, because it's me and my brother who's 2.5 years younger than me, and then our co-host who's 25. And I always feel like it's me and my brother shitting on Future and all the new music
Yeah.
that he likes. He likes the old stuff too, but he also likes that. So we're always like, that's the running sort of joke, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was listening to our music, and in our early music in the, like, I don't know, call it '05, something like that. Like, we're complaining about the older people saying the rap has to be this way. And I think it's really funny that, like,
Keep
I'm not,
cycling.
it's psycho, and I'm not sort of like that now. Like, I'm more, except my brother's younger than me and more old school than me, I guess, with all that stuff. So with that said, I still do prefer, I think the music was better. There's either the early 2000s type of era. So like 2000 through '07, '08, which
Yep.
encompasses like that Jay-Z era of the time, Kanye, who's my goat
Yep.
personally, Fonte from Little Brother, who's my other goat,
Eminem.
um, Eminem at the same time, exactly. Another one that a lot of, like, he's big now, but at the time the rapidy rap heads weren't feeling it, was Wayne. And we were
Yeah.
loving Wayne because he was lyrical, but the rapidy rap heads didn't understand that. They thought it was like commercial or mainstream or whatever. But Carter 2, which was, I think yesterday, was like the 25th anniversary or something.
Yeah.
Oh, not
Legend.
25, it won't be that. Whatever. Anniversary, but it's spectacular. It's his best album. And then obviously
Mhm.
Drought 3, like the mixtapes and stuff. So I think that would be probably one of the favorite. Otherwise, like 94 through like 98 was the
Okay.
other real era, which is
Yeah.
different, but still just as fire. And it's interesting. We put Dan is his name, a 25-year-old co-host of other pod, and we put him on to say Mace recently. And now every time I see him, he's bumping Mace and it's interesting because he never really got exposed to that. And Mace was like my guilty pleasure at the time. Like, my rap head friends would have made fun of me for listening to it, but I always loved it. And it was like, it's so innocent in comparison. Like, it's saying the same things. Like, no, everyone's saying the same thing, but it was so innocently put. It's not like how blunt music is now, and to the point where it's like, Jesus Christ, relax, my guy. Like, so
Yeah.
I would say those
Yeah.
two eras would be, I don't know if I could probably choose. Probably the 2000s might be, because like, what's that thing they say when you're like in your teen years, that's the music that
Yeah.
imprints on you.
Well, because it's like supposed to be like, when you're having your best time of your life, like
Right. It was
best
like
memories or
the
whatever.
college, sort of teen to
Yeah.
college kind of era, so that it kind of bled in for me. And it was like, there was the music discovery. I guess I got into hip hop early '90s. Um, Depends when you count it. Like Crisscross in like '91 or something like that. So we were babies, like '92, and then getting into the real stuff from there. Like, you discover that, Doggy Style and like Snoop and all, and blah blah blah, like all of that, like late, like got the Chronic a couple years late, discover NWA, like, and then you keep going through all of the stuff like Mob Deep and like all that kind of era. That shit was super powerful for us. But then I feel like I was like your age in the early 2000s, and sort of that was a different, because now you're in the clubs, now you're like
Yeah.
out, you're driving, you're jamming. Whereas like if I'm 15, 16, I'm in my bedroom by myself.
Yeah.
So it was like,
Yeah.
would have been cool to go to like a club and hear all of the music that I was listening to in my bedroom. So it's definitely different times. So those two. Do you have? I guess, do you have a favorite era, or is it?
Oh gosh. Um, it's tough because like I appreciate, I would say, almost every era. It's tough because like for me, it's really hard for me to say like, oh, I really love like the 90's era, or I really love like the
I guess you
early
weren't there.
2000s era, because I wasn't in it. And I think it's I
Some
don't
things
want
you
to
have to be there.
discount it, but it's like if I didn't feel it when it first came out, how can I sit here on a podcast and tell you, oh, that was my favorite era of music when I wasn't bumping it back then, So it's like it's really hard for me to say that. Um,
I agree with that. Sometimes you just gotta be there, and
yeah,
that's okay.
it's just like it's different. Like I have a really hard time like saying that with like a like just truthfully, like I can't say that. So I do like appreciate it. Like I think like without legends from the 90's, without legends from the early 2000s, like we wouldn't be in music where we are today. With that
Facts.
being said, I would say from my time, I would say probably like around that 2014 era. I mean, you had Kendrick with like Good Kid, Mad City, and then like a year after that, he drops To Pimp a Butterfly. You had 2014 Forest Hills Drive. You had early Drake. I mean,
Yep.
Drake has changed a lot, but you had early Drake. You had Kanye in some of his best
I
years,
think
some
it
of his
would be
most not his best, some of his most
Jesus-ish,
experimental years, I
Pablo?
would say.
Yeah. Oh, Garrett, 100%.
Because
100% the
like
most experimental.
he dropped Yeezus in
Wait,
2013,
was it
so I
13?
mean
Okay. And Pablo was 16, I think?
16, yeah.
16,
So
okay.
I think that kind of like 2010 to like 2016-ish, I would say probably my
It's a cool
favorite
era.
era just because I think and we also weren't in the Spotify era yet. Or streaming era. We were
Not as
still
deep as we are now, no, you're right.
I mean, we were still buying music off iTunes, really. I mean, we had like Pandora. I remember Pandora was really big back then, but like it wasn't as deep as it was now. It was still kind of coming. So
Yeah, no,
I would
you're
say
right.
back then.
That's a good period, and I remember when I moved to Canada permanently in 2010, and but the job I had beforehand, my boss was British, and I remember him showing me Spotify in 2010. I'm like, this is fucked. Why would like I don't want this. Why would like I want to like
Yeah.
and it just seems silly. And then
Yeah.
now it's everywhere, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's funny to see like all of that stuff change. It's just like this has been a big change, but there's been some fire. I would agree. I think that's another wicked era for hip hop and for other genres too. Like that was a good time. It's only really
Yeah.
lately it's been a bit weird or
It's been
patchy.
weird because there's I
Excuse me.
I've mentioned a lot on this podcast. There's been a ton of experimentation, and I think we're starting to come to a period where some of the people who have been in like the game for a while, they're like almost trying to redefine their voice or redefine something. And we talked about loyalty. I think they're trying to look for like that next hit song. Like there's I don't know. It's interesting.
Hmm. Because they know even though they have the artist cachet and they've been around for so long that
Yeah.
it's still a song-based era. So nobody can survive really. Well, not nobody,
There's
but
some. I mean, like Drake, like whatever he puts out is it's
it's
gonna
always
sell.
gonna
Like I
smash.
would say,
Yeah.
even like a guy like Travis, like, and
Yeah.
I actually liked his album. I thought he
Utopia
actually
was great.
executed pretty well. So
You're talking
like
Utopia,
he's kind
right?
of an exception, but like there are certain people who can get away with being sloppy.
Drake is one of them. Did you actually? This is because we argue about this on our podcast all the
Yeah.
time. So, what do you think of For All the Dogs?
If the deluxe would have come out with For All the Dogs, like
Different convo.
initially, I would have loved it. I think it was a little polluted. I don't think it needed to be 23 songs. But overall, I thought it was anywhere from decent to good. I think
Okay.
it's aged on me a lot, is what I'll say. My
Oh.
initial 2 or 3 listens, I was like, it's mid. It's okay.
Hmm.
I think there's some great songs, but I also was like, it's kind of all over the place, which it still is. But I think I've come to like appreciate it a little bit more as it's aged. And I think the songs that are good on that album have continued to be in my playlist.
That's really good feedback. That's really thoughtful. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was like mid. Like, and I'm a Drake like bit
Yeah.
since like '08. I've been into Drake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to love it. I always want to love his stuff, but he doesn't
Yeah.
always deliver shit that I want to love. But the Scary Hours was fire. I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I probably got to go. I gave it 4 or 5 listens, and it was like you said, polluted is a good word for it. It was just
Just because like there's songs in there that I'm like, why is this in this album? Like if I could take
exactly.
out certain songs, I seriously think if
You can get
you
it down to like
take
10 to
out
12.
like at least, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 songs out of that album, you could make that a decently good album. And that's why I said decent to good because yes, you should look at it as a whole. I think albums should be cohesive. It's something I preach, but The highs I thought were pretty good, but the lows definitely brought it way down. So that's
Yeah,
where
the
I'm
lows
at
were
with
bad.